Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be painting a Shardspeaker of Slaanesh. Now this continues the new tradition of Games Workshop with having a good manual inside the picture, so they've really improved on that. Assembly is pretty much very simple and straightforward, the pieces are very clear and obvious, there's no real issues with it. Now I've assembled up to the point that it would get in the way of painting. The staff piece is separate. He has a front robe cloth, loincloth thing, that's separate because it's going to be a different color, and his right foot is a different color as well. And as such, I've assembled everything else apart from these. Now I've prepped the model for priming with some tape and a backboard, and so with some Bright Touch general purpose primer I will be priming this front and back. And when that's done I'm going to take liquitex modeling putty and I'm going to apply this all over the base. Now I'm prepping my dry brushes with water, making them wet and slick, and then I dry them off with a paper towel heavily, but this keeps the bristles like very springy. Now I'm going to use the artwork as a guide, and I normally don't talk about this, but essentially I plan ahead my painting order, and I take a look at this and I see what kind of techniques I would use for the different parts and different pieces and such, and I essentially make an order in my head of what parts I need to paint first so that they won't get in the way of other things, or if I want to use like airbrushing or dry brushing on a certain part, I should do that before I go with some more meticulous areas. And after taking a look at this, I'm actually going to start with his face mask, because it's clearly out of the way of the others, and I think dry brushing will be used for a lot of the other places. So I'm going to start with his face mask. And now with Pallid Witch Flesh and Carrionburg Crimson, we're going to paint his face mask. We're going to do a base layer of Pallid Witch Flesh, and once that dries we're going to apply Carrionburg Crimson on it. I may dilute it with a little bit of water and such, but basically what happens is I go back and then I dry brush with Pallid Witch Flesh, then I apply some more Carrionburg Crimson, and I do this back and forth of dry brushing and then eventually painting straight lines on the folds, the most prominent folds, and then applying more Carrionburg Crimson. I tried to make it pinkish because I don't really have a pink paint, and so I figured this was a good substitute. And now with Xerxes Purple, Druchii Violet, Daemonette Hide, Genestealer Purple, and Pallid Witch Flesh, we're going to paint his robe. And we're going to start off with a layer of Xerxes Purple all over. We will then apply Druchii Violet in to apply more depth and shadow. I will then proceed to dry brush Xerxes Purple all over the cloak, going side to side and up and down in the recessed areas. I then apply a dry brush of Daemonette Hide on it, side to side and then up and down in the recesses. I then do a light dry brushing of Genestealer Purple. I then do a mix of Genestealer Purple and Pallid Witch Flesh together in a 1-to-1 mix, and I dry brush it on. However, for some reason I think the dry brush caked on too much paint by this time, and when I try to dry brush it here, it like applies some caked on paint onto it and kind of ruins the texture of the robe a bit. And the contrast was too high. I should have used probably at the minimum or at the most 2 parts Xerxes or 2 parts Genestealer Purple with 1 part Pallid Witch Flesh. It was too much. Kind of ruined it. I then turn to Carrionburg Crimson to try to fix this, and I apply it all over. It doesn't work, and in the still picture you can see how much like the paint caked on from this one step. It was perfectly smooth beforehand, so I don't know what happened. I try dry brushing that same mix again over after the Carrionburg Crimson to see if it can like smooth out the colors after I wash the brush, and like, nah, it is too late. I try painting the paint straight on it in straight lines. Maybe we'll smooth out the edges, smooth out these wrinkles and the caked on paint. It did not. It was too much of a contrast to begin with. And now with Corn Red, Genestealer Purple, Carrionburg Crimson, and Pallid Witch Flesh, I'm now going to paint the cloak a second time in a different style, Sigvald's way. With a 1-to-1 mix of Corn Red and Genestealer Purple, I paint all the cloak again. However, because of the caked on paint from before, it's still kind of visible. I then apply some blue tack to cover the face because I'm going to airbrush now. I then take Genestealer Purple and I airbrush it towards the sides and such, and trying to pick out the edges and stuff. A light airbrushing. And then once that is done, I then take to an dry brush and I dry brush into like really solidify lines along all the edges and the folds. I then apply Carrionburg Crimson all over the robes. And once that is done, I then go and dry brush Xerxes Purple again onto it, focusing on the more raised areas. And once that is done, I then take a very fine thin brush and I apply Carrionburg Crimson directly into the deepest, darkest recesses. I then take a fine brush and paint straight lines along all the major folds and edges. I then take Carrionburg Crimson and airbrush it directly into the recesses and basically the lower half, the folds of the robe that go in, to add more depth and color to it. And so with Xerxes Purple, Carrionburg Crimson, Nuln Oil, and Gene Stealer Purple, spoilers, I only use half of these, I then paint his front loincloth thing. I use Xerxes Purple. However, I watered it down enough, and the Xerxes Purple had and the base loincloth had a really white color beforehand, so it just looked like it naturally highlighted. So I was like, I'm not going to ruin what's good. So then I take Nuln Oil and apply it on it to darken it further, and it looks great. Yeah, that was actually easier than I thought. And now with Dark Reaper and Dawnstone, I'm going to paint the stone that he stands on. With Dark Reaper, I'm going to paint it as a base layer, which is a bluish. And then with Dawnstone, I'm going to dry brush twice on it. So the first dry brush will get all over, and the final dry brush will mostly hit the edges and sort of highlight it further. And now with Eshin Gray and Nuln Oil, I'm going to paint his staff and his boot. Now basically what's going to happen is I'm going to apply Eshin Gray, and then I'm going to apply Nuln Oil on top. And then once that's done, I'm then going to dry brush the color Eshin Gray back on. Now one thing I do a little bit differently is that for the staff and the boot, is after dry brushing them once, I then apply another layer of Nuln Oil, and then I dry brush it a second time. But for the staff, I dry brush one specific quarter of it on one side and another quarter on another side, so that it looks like there's light, there's a front part. So I dry brush the whole thing, applied Nuln Oil, and then I dry brush basically one front quarter of it and then one back quarter of it to get some bit more color or depth to it. I then try to go further. I take Dark Reaper, which is a bluish gray, dark gray, and then I just dry brush this all over the staff along the I dry brush this along the staff, and I dry brush this along the feet and the horns. I forgot to mention we're also doing the horns. So moving on, with Dawnstone, I'm going to use this as a base layer. I'm going to paint the edges of his front loincloth thing with Dawnstone as a base layer, and also the opening folds of his chest, where the robes meet. And then once that is done, I'm going to take Pallid Witch Flesh and I'm going to paint it as the top layer for his front loincloth and his chest opening. And now with Kislev Flesh and Seraph Sephium, we're going to paint his skin. I'm going to start off with a base layer of Kislev Flesh. Then what we're going to do is a slightly watered down layer of Seraph Sephium all over the flesh. And then we're going to paint straight lines along his hands, his face, his nose, eyebrows, his arms and stuff. The Seraph Sephium will help guide you. We want to keep the dark areas with Seraph. And then once that's done, we're going to do another layer of Seraph Sephium, and then we're going to highlight further another time. And then we're going to take some Agrax Earthshade and we're going to apply it, well, we're going to water it down a little bit, and we're going to apply directly into the eyes to give them basically guy liner. And now with Xandri Dust and Skeleton Horde Contrast, we're going to paint the, the little scroll he has on his side. So basically what we're just going to do is a simple layer of Xandri Dust, dry it, and once it's dried we apply Skeleton Horde Contrast all over. Not enough to heavily pool, but just enough to cover everything. And then we will re-highlight with straight lines along the edges and along the sides with Xandri Dust to pick out his highlights. Simple, quick, easy. And then with Dark Reaper and Dawnstone, we're going to paint his little mirror thingy. So what we're going to do is we're going to take Dark Reaper, and that's going to be our base layer. And then what we're going to do is a bit interesting. We're going to take a 1-to-1 mix of Dark Reaper and Dawnstone, and what we're going to do is we're going to apply a good amount of water to it till it's kind of like the consistency of milk. We're going to make sure we have a fine brush and make sure the excess water is removed. And what we're going to do is we're just going to carefully paint the symbol that's from the front mark, which is the Slaanesh symbol, which is basically a straight line with some, like some circles around it or through it. And we're going to repeat this repeatedly with this mix until we can see it clearly. And then we're going to move up to Dawnstone, and we're going to apply it in the center to try to highlight it, sort of like give these circles a spine, a center. And then I forgot to show it, but then I took a little bit of Pallid Witch Flesh, watered it down a lot, and mixed it with the Dawnstone, and then applied it as a dot or two here and there to like these highlights. And then once that was done, I went back with Dark Reaper, made sure it was wet enough, and then I applied smooth transitions to tighten up this Dawnstone effect. And well, I mean, it looks like some pretty decent scribbles. And now with Dawnstone, Pallid Witchflesh, and Carrionburg Crimson, we're going to paint the smoke on his staff. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to apply a base layer of Dawnstone. And once that's done, we're going to take a dry brush and we will lightly dry brush all throughout the smoke with the Pallid Witchflesh. And then once that is finished, we're going to take our airbrush and we will carefully airbrush at from a downward angle up, and so it gets onto the bottom sides of the smoke. However, it looks a little too much, so then I go back and do another dry brushing of Pallid Witchflesh again on it to remove a bit of the too much purple or pink everywhere. And the effect looks pretty nice. Now with Dark Reaper and Hoeth Blue, what we're going to do is we're going to paint this little glass orb thingy. So what I do is I do a 1-to-1 mix of Dark Reaper and Hoeth Blue as a start to all over. Then I do a 2 parts Hoeth to 1 part Dark Reaper, and then highlight the bottom ring, top ring, and the center of it. Only the darkest recesses have this, or have the original color. And then I'm just going to take some Hoeth Blue and I'm going to highlight the very rim, the very sort of top center of the big orb thingy, and the bottom ring as well. And now we are done with everything that's not a metallic, and so with AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, we're going to apply this on everything we have painted. We're going to have to do a little bit extra onto his face mask and his cape, because it has the Carrionburg Crimson has too much of a shine to it, and this is going to help tone it down. And now with Leadbelcher, Nuln Oil, and Stormhose Silver, we're going to paint the silver metals. We're going to do this with Leadbelcher. We're going to paint the pauldron on his side, the medal chest piece that he has there, as well as parts of his sword handle, and the chain for his front loincloth. And then we're going to apply Nuln Oil all over that to add some depth. And then we're going to go back and we're going to overbrush onto all the metal pieces we have painted. And then we're going to paint Stormhose Silver on the most raised areas, or the center of each of the metal shoulder pads and high raised areas. And now with Brass Scorpion and Stormhose Silver, we're going to paint all of the metal pieces that we haven't done yet, which is the helmet, parts of the staff, his object that he's holding, and parts of his belt. Before I paint the metals on the staff, I then realized that orb thing needs a little bit more work, and I want to be able to, I like the effect that I've gotten so far, and I want to airbrush some more onto it. However, if I do that, it's going to ruin the gold. So before I do that, I take Dragonhof Nightshade and I try to airbrush it to add like some blue to the orb. However, it doesn't work. It's too thin, and what comes out is like a spray, so I keep it there as sort of like stars and stuff, and so, you know what, I'm not just like, whatever, the orb's fine. And then I continue painting the staff with Brass Scorpion. I then take a 1-to-1 mix of Brass Scorpion and Stormhost Silver, and then I do a combination of overbrushing and painting straight lines on all the raised areas. There's a lot of like rims, spines, stuff like that, edges, pointy stuff. So I basically just go for it there. I then go with 2 parts Stormhost, 1 part Brass Scorpion, and so basically what I do is I paint like 40 to 50% of the entire metal pieces. Again, I overbrush especially heavily on the bull head that he's wearing, helmet. Yeah. I then take pure I take the light color and then I apply it on all the rims, edges, the most pointy parts, like 10 to 20% of the metal pieces will have this on it. And then with Cantor Blue and Hoeth Blue, I paint the gems that are everywhere. So I start off with a base layer of Cantor Blue. He has them on his head, the mirror thingy, a few on his belt. Yeah, and his chest piece also has one. So basically what I do is I start off with pure Cantor Blue, and then I do a 1-to-1 of Cantor and Hoeth. And then I move to 1 part Cantor and 2 parts Hoeth. And then I move to pure Hoeth in the end. But with that, I paint basically a circle around the gem. If the gem is too small, I just paint the lower half. I then begin final assembly. One note, I would re-look back at the instruction manual to get this process right so you don't screw it up. The leg goes all the way towards, or the knee attachment goes over towards the top of the robe part. I kind of put in the middle. I had to swap that around. I would put the loincloth on first because it has to go behind the shoe. Oops. And then the only thing that was a little bit tricky was the staff, because I got to make sure it's glued to his body and as well as his robes connect without looking bad. And then I'm going to super glue him to the base once it's all done. Then I'm going to take some liquitex gloss varnish and I'm going to apply this on all the gems he has. He also has one on the back, as far as I can tell, on his little dagger sword thing. And done. Well, that was a bit weird. He's a very straightforward and simple character, but there are a few things I got a bit wrong. I tried the kislev flesh. It's too yellow. I thought it was, like, I don't know, whiter than that. Not yellowish, but, oh well. The robes, it's unfortunate what happened with them. It's a little still cakey. The smoke turned out great. The shiny orb thingy turned out really good. The metals turned really good. His base is okay. I basically tried a bunch of new stuff though. His gems look good. The dark part of his robes look good. Horns look good. Face is okay. It was a good practice run, but I feel like I messed up more than I did good. So I'm going to say that it's a 6 out of 10 at best. I don't know, I don't feel like I did too well. There's some stuff I did really well. His staff looks good, all the medals look good. Parts of his robe look good. The front loincloth one looks good. But well, that's about it. Well, alright, I'll be moving on, and due to some unfortunate foresight, or lack of foresight, I didn't get the next Slaanesh model in time, so it'll actually be a while before I get my hands on it. So for now, I'll be switching back to some other models, but once it comes back, we're going back to Slaanesh. Alright, so leave a like if you like the video, comment if you want to comment on anything, share it if you can share it, and that's it. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.